Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of the Bridging Impact podcast. I'm your host, Justin Furtado, and I'm thrilled to bring you this audio experience for the next generation of impact-driven leaders. Today, the very first guest is the one and only club director of the Boys and Girls Club of Emerald Valley, Shelly Williams. Shelly is a top-notch leader. She's an incredible human. You're going to gain a lot of insights on what it means to be a great listener, to empower your team, and how to do it all as a mom of three while pursuing an MBA at Bushnell University. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Bridging Impact podcast. Today, my guest is the one and only club director at the Boys and Girls Club of Emerald Valley, Shelly Williams. Shelly, I'm thrilled for our conversation today. I'm really excited to talk leadership, talk about how you've been learning from this new experience and also transitioning to your new role, and how the Boys and Girls Club of Emerald Valley really focuses on developing young leaders in Eugene-Springfield and Lane County. So without further ado, I want to dive into the conversation on leadership by defining what your definition of leadership, especially impactful leadership, is.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me, Justin. It's good to see you again. Justin and I worked together at the Boys and Girls Club of Emerald Valley, and I had the pleasure of supervising him as he joined us as a youth development professional. And so I think this is really interesting because he was one of the people that I got to personally lead and also manage. So for me, I really see, at least for leadership in my capacity, that I really see it as showing the way and really helping unify a team of people around a shared vision and mission. And especially as we work in a nonprofit sector, keeping that mission and vision at the forefront of our team is kind of how I see the leader of the organization managing all the people and unifying around the cause.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I'm curious, like, as a club director and you're managing a lot of the, myself and my coworkers are young professionals just starting into the workforce. And you talked about with me before pre-pod about how you were a new leader. So how did you kind of learn all of this on the fly and also, practice some of these things about showing the way, unifying the team and working around the mission?
Yeah. A little bit about me. When I accepted this position, I had a number of professional experiences that were related to working at the Boys and Girls Club, but definitely not the full capacity of leading a full team of sometimes as small as 10 and it went up to 30 in the summertime. So this was definitely a new endeavor for me. And I was a new leader, and I'm helping lead new individuals in career paths that they're just entering as well. So it was a unique experience that I got to learn on the fly and in the middle of COVID on top of that. So things were changing daily with COVID restrictions, whether schools were opening, whether we're going to be open all day or we're going to open for part of the day. So it was definitely a challenge and unique experience. So some of the things that I really kind of thought and reflected on were that I really had to draw from past experience and relate it however I could. So even though I didn't have professional experience in managing people, I could draw from my past experiencing of leading parents at a parent-teacher organization. I could draw from experiencing of leading volunteers at Eugene Faith Center when I worked at the church. So while it wasn't in a professional paid position, I could still draw from some of my volunteer experience and just from my life of how I wanted to position myself as a leader. So I knew that from, working with a lot of volunteers, whether they be parents or people just in a church organization, I knew that gratitude and praise was something that worked really well for leading unpaid individuals. So I felt like that was what I was going to lean in towards when I started working in a paid capacity and leading a team of people who are on staff. And then, of course, at the same time, when we're working with youth, I had not really worked in a youth serving organization. And so I really had to draw on my past experience as a parent and also raising up a child with ADHD and a child with a speech delay. So I drew from some of my knowledge of working with my own kids to help apply to some situations when we're working with youth and having to guide staff in tricky situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're using that experience that you've had before, even if it was in, different situations, and drawing it and pulling it into working with, young adults, young professionals who are then mentoring even younger adults, like little humans. And I'm curious what kind of the trickle down effect was with, working with, newer professionals in terms of working with youth and having and helping them, learn the mission of the Boys and Girls Club and practice some of the values. And how did you continue moving that forward and kind of keep teaching and leading those young professionals?
Reflecting back, I think the big thing I drew on is that I was okay to admit when I didn't have an answer on things. And so what that allowed me to do was know, like, I can have someone, a youth development professional, someone on our team come to me and ask for help or advice. And it was okay for me to say, I really don't know, but let's work through this together. So I think what it allowed us to do is to find a solution and navigate it together as a team. Even if I didn't have the answer, they didn't have the answer, I could help ask the questions to draw it out. So it really allowed our team to start to solve some of their own problems and kind of venture into their own professional careers that they're going to have to navigate throughout their entire lives. Of, I've been given this position, and hopefully someone can help me along the way. So some of the questions I was asked was like, if someone came to me with a behavior concern of a kid, I'd say, okay, well, what have you tried? Like, what's worked in the past and what's not working? And then what are some of the ideas that you can come up with to like try out moving forward? So it's kind of helping guide their problem solving abilities, which will carry through any career path. So if you can problem solve on the fly and work in a very human centric organization and you can do it well, you can go on to do anything.
No, I love that. And it's kind of giving the power and essentially the power to the employee and to those who are making those decisions, because a lot of times in terms of, as an employee, you want to lean on to your supervisor to make sure that you're making the perfect decision. And I know oftentimes I remember you saying that it's working with humans. It can be messy sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's a big gray area, but giving the power to the employee to be able to make their own decisions. I'm curious how you build the trust for themselves. Like, how do you build that trust within themselves that they're making the right decision?
I mean, what I kind of reflect on is that I need to be able to give praise and tell people what they're doing right, because if I see them in action doing the right thing, it's going to help motivate them and keep them making those same decisions. I had a kind of an aha moment recently. I joined this new gym called Orange Theory, and I really love it. It's coach-led, exercise. And one thing I found that was so motivating about it was that I'm running on the treadmill. I'm starting to have self-doubt and I'm starting to feel horrible. I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I can keep doing this. And all of a sudden, even I'm in a group setting, my coach goes, "Let's go, Shelly." And I'm like, I can do anything. I can do anything. And I just keep running, and like harder than I probably even need to. But it was kind of this aha moment for me. I was like, I need to be doing those same things with my team. Is when I find them, when they need that little bit of pep or that motivation, tell them when they're doing something right, or give them that extra boost so they can keep on going. So those are some things that I've reflected on and thought about lately. And I've tried to implement, and I've tried to get better even as a leader every single month that I find, even like that's a current story for me. So I always try to take that and then keep going into my teams. So, and then of course, like with trust, like it really just sometimes takes time, and knowing that we're working together on the same team, and, being able to even discuss hard things is really important as well. So we've been really fortunate to have some solid players in our organizations from day one with me. And I really want to keep fostering those relationships and knowing what are my team's goals, like where are they headed in their career, what do they want to do, and how can I help them get there? So some of that's just developed over time as well.
Right. Yeah. I think time is one of the best ways to develop that trust. I'm curious how you develop that trust in terms of like empowering some of those players that you're talking about to then go and develop the trust with other relationships and building that trust around a unified mission.
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of in regards to that, I know that I like to have people play to their strengths. So the more I get to know them and put them in situations where they're going to thrive, I know that they feel heard and valued. So if a staff person comes to me saying, I'm really struggling working with this group of fifth graders, but then all of a sudden I see them frequently out and about making those connections with our first and second graders, maybe it's a conversation of saying, well, maybe your strength is working with these little ones, or maybe your strength is working with our teens. And so I think by recognizing their strength and putting them in positions that they're going to shine, they know that I'm not going to put them in a situation that I'm not going to be setting them up for failure. I think that's something that really helps build the trust, is knowing that people don't have to be good at every single thing, that we can just put you in a spot where you really are going to shine, because I only really want to hire people who have that mission and that drive. And sometimes it's just a matter of finding where they're going to fit in best.
Yeah, finding that right fit. I think that is so important. There's different roles on a sports team, right? Like, even for me, like if I may not naturally be, I'm not going to be an NBA player, right? But I can coach youth basketball. That's more so my role in terms of what I should be doing, and kind of placing each, employee, each team member in the spots where that'll help them succeed. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, I'm guessing that your answer might be like, it takes a little bit of time and getting to know the team or employee, but do you have, different strategies for placing team members in places where they are work the best?
I think a lot of times it's through observations and seeing how, their interactions on the floor, like in a professional capacity, like working in front of the classroom. But a lot of times you really see people shine, or their true colors or their skill strengths come through, is when it's in those more like natural, organic moments, like a kid sitting on a bench, all of a sudden needing a buddy. That was something I saw with one of our team members, Allison, is that, yes, we had her kind of placed in a teen position. She was doing just fine. But I caught this little glimpse of her sitting down and sitting with Colin on the bench in this really natural, calming moment. And she's just coloring with him and having this really great, engaging conversation. It was like, all of a sudden, it's like, I think this is where you could really shine in this age group. And so sometimes it's seeing not the official capacity, but sometimes those little more organic moments too. And then I think the other thing too is that I really do believe that our team is smart and they're sharp and they're knowledgeable, and me believing that really helps to bring that in them as too. So even like, as you know, we navigated COVID together. We were doing a lot of distance learning, and so sure, none of us had done distance learning support before. How are we really going to keep kids with their butt in a desk focus for 4 hours online? It was hard, and we'd never done it before. Nobody had done it before. And when like a teacher would call saying, hey, I'm really concerned that this kid isn't getting the support they need, or I'm not sure that anybody's helping them, or they're in a classroom alone, or whatever they might be seeing in this little window, I could confidently say, hey, our team really cares about these kids. You're seeing a small glimpse into like a small moment, but they are getting extra support. We have tutors going on around. I could really confidently stand up for them and say, we are doing the absolute best, and what you're seeing, it might not be the whole picture. So if anything, I got to really stick up for my team, because I knew that they were smart and sharp and capable, and being able to tell that to and share that with the community as well.
Right, and be able to take pride and know that the staff are there and working in terms of the development of the youth's best interests. Mm-hmm. And I want to, I guess, shift a little bit of gears here and talk a little bit more, about the youth and what you are excited about at the club right now, and what really excites you about your job. While you could be a leader really anywhere, but what really excites you about working with little humans and developing humans?
Well, I really love the mission and the values of Boys and Girls Club. There is very little else that makes my heart sing as much as this organization, knowing that kids have caring adults in their lives who, like, no matter where they're coming from, every single person just needs someone to give them a little bit of attention and hope and, and help. And so that makes me super excited. And then also on the flip side, as a working parent, I know that there are so many families who need this consistent, high quality after school care program so they can continue to work and be part of our community and have, a job that's meaningful for them and helps, really provide their family stability. And with the Boys and Girls Club, we remove those financial barriers, whether it be a little to no cost, their kid can attend for as low as $40 for the entire year. And so there's the twofold. I know that kids' lives are being impacted and changed in positive ways, and I know that families are being strengthened because we're providing a desperately needed service. And so we're just very excited to keep growing. And right now we only have our one Boys and Girls Club site in Westmoreland Park, but we have our sites on Bethel, and we're really in the planning phases of opening a second site. And I know that the CEO, Matt Sorensen, and I have vision to really start multiple clubs in the next 5 years.
That's amazing. So what's the ripple effect that you are hoping to, make on one youth and then another and then another? How do you see them developing into, being, productive, caring citizens like the Boys and Girls Club mission says? Like what's the vision for when they go out into the world, and what can they possibly do?
Well, I mean, the thing I really kind of lean into is like, we're really helping the kids to learn how to live and learn how to lead. And so we're helping foster some of those social emotional skills. We're trying to help them identify with that growth mindset of like, I can do hard things. And if I can do this here at the Boys and Girls Club, I can do this anywhere in my life. And so we want to be that safe, stable place that no matter what else is going on in their life and no matter what's going on at home, we can be that consistent place helping raise them up. So our hope is that they really continue to develop with their identity of who they are, and knowing that they can do, hard things and go on in their life to graduate high school and then having a meaningful career path, whether that be college or the trades or entering the workforce. We just want to keep developing youth so they can go on to be productive, healthy, happy adults.
Absolutely. So what are some of those, how do you start developing young, productive, and happy adults working a meaningful career at the ages of 6 to 9 and then 10 to 12? Like, what are some of those, programs that you all are doing currently that are helping develop those skills?
One thing that comes to mind, I think two things I really want to focus on, is that we are really excited about expanding our partnership with Looking Glass, and that we have an on-site therapist who'll be able to provide services inside of the club during club hours, knowing that kids are getting the support they need with their mental health, and knowing that they have access to those services, so that they really can start to, identify any trauma in their life and be able to work past that. So really seeing the whole child and knowing that they're mentally and physically well. And so that's really something we're focusing on, and starting some small groups to develop friendships. So if a child can learn how to play together and help navigate conflict and be able to do that in the safe place of the Boys and Girls Club, that's going to take them really far in life, is having those skill sets and social emotional growth. And then on the other side of it, we've been able to bring on a staff person who has a lot of strengths in science and STEM. And so we've been able to develop some programs all about using tools. And so we also want children to have some really just foundational skills of how you can use a screwdriver, how you can use a hammer, how you can use these things that might be new to you, introduce them how to use it, but how to safely use it, and then how to confidently use it. And so some of those are the hard skills that we're also trying to learn and develop in kids along the way too. And so our hope is to continue expanding that, so they have the social emotional growth, and they also have some really interesting, fascinating, important life skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about developing the holistic side of each human, and some humans are probably going to love, hammering on nails, and that might be their career path of going from there. And they learned that from the Boys and Girls Club. And then some people maybe they're becoming lawyers and learning some of this conflict management skills. And I think all of us, even myself, definitely can continue to learn some of those conflict management skills that are incredibly important once you enter the workforce. So I always think those programs are really wonderful, and I would love for you to, have an opportunity to share a story about a youth, and of course don't have to use their name, about their kind of their growth and development that you've seen in the past few years that, helps remind you about the work and the impact that you all are making at the Boys and Girls Club of Emerald Valley.
Yeah, I have two kids that immediately come to mind. One of them is a young boy who started in our program at the height of the pandemic and did their schooling online, and so was part of our program from 8 in the morning till 5:30 at night. Mind you, that is a really long day for any child to be out and about and performing. And so this child was really having a hard time being in the classroom, being able to regulate his emotions, be able to navigate any sort of conflict or anything difficult, that if something on the computer didn't go right or if something he didn't want to do, it was instant, like heightened emotions, screaming, sobbing, crying. And what we were able to do is just continue to work with this kid. It almost got to the point where it's like, I don't know if we can keep serving this kid. And that breaks my heart. But we continued on, and we were able to find ways to work with this young boy to help him, emotionally regulate a little bit better. That, okay, even if you get stuck, here's some options. Here's some ways that you can sit in your desk and stay calm. And here's some things you can do so that and it got to the point where even when he was still hitting a heightened point, we knew how to better help him, whether it be being firm and giving him some choices or giving him a little bit of comfort. We were able to keep working with him, and he's still in our program and thriving. So that makes me so happy to know that we've been part of this young boy's growth and helped him during a really transitional, difficult time when schools were shuttered and the world was being turned upside down. We were able to still work with him and kind of give him hopefully some skills he can continue on working on. And then another one of our older youth has been in our club for a long time, and she's seen a lot of change in our organizations. She's probably been with us since first grade and continued on, and she's now in seventh grade. And so, of course, there's been different leaders and different club directors and different staff, but through it all, she had this comment the other day where she was kind of reflecting on the fact that all these different things that the club have taken her to do that she hasn't been able to do through her home life. So we've been able to go to take the kids swimming at Splash. We've been able to go to Wildlife Safari. We were able to take the kids ice skating. We're able to provide them with these childhood experiences that some kids don't receive outside of our doors, and because whether it be financial barriers or time. And she said out loud, she's like, wow, we get to do a lot of things. She goes, I can do anything. She goes, I can do anything because of the club. And we paused and we're like, whoa, you need to say that again. You're like, I can do anything because I'm part of the club. So it's part of that growth mindset of, even if it's just these experiences, that she's knowing that we're opening doors for her. So I think that it's been neat to have her part of our club, and hopefully that she continues on in her path and can stay with us through high school as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And sometimes it maybe seems small that you all are going to, going swimming or going ice skating, but just the realization of the doors that it opens when you kind of get out there and into the world. And especially, obviously COVID's been an enormous challenge for adults, but I can't even imagine for little humans. And I've talked to a few, of the players that I coach in terms of basketball. And I talked to someone yesterday, and he's just talking about how anxious I think people are feeling because there's so much stress because of the pandemic, and it's a lot really underlying. And it's so wonderful to have a place like the Boys and Girls Club for little humans, just to have a place to be kids and have fun. I think that's one of the most important parts of being a kid, is having fun. And I'm curious if you have any other, thoughts on keeping it fun too at the Boys and Girls Club, and even with the staff, in terms of being a leader, sometimes just having fun.
Right. Well, we do have a lot of fun together, which is great. I kind of think of it like we really get to bring the fun. We get to do the things, we don't have the constraints of school. We're not having to meet certain curriculum standards. We get to bring the fun. And then even if we're peppering in the learning, and whether it be, still focusing on a little bit of math or focusing on reading, or whether we're working on tool series or whatever we're kind of focusing our outcomes on, I kind of like to say it's like hiding vegetables in spaghetti sauce. Like, we're still teaching and learning, but we're hiding it in a way that's still fun and engaging. So kids, they don't even know that they're really gaining these skills, because they're having fun together. They're being kids. They're getting to have their childhood experience that they might not have had otherwise if they were just at home alone. So we really try to keep it fun together and keep the kids moving. And we like to get the kids' input too. Like, what do you guys like? What do you want to learn more about? And so one thing that came to mind recently is that we asked the kids, and a lot of them are really into comics, really into comic books reading, but also in wanting to do the art and making their own comic books. So we said, okay. So we reached out to Lane Arts Council, and we have a partnership now that we have a professional artist coming in to teach our kids how to write and build their own comic books. So we like to listen to kids' interest and then bring the fun into us as well if we have partnerships. But then in regards to staff too, it is a young and dynamic team, and we try to, enjoy our time together. I mean, our staff Christmas party was axe throwing. Like, that's what we wanted to do. So we went and threw axes together for fun. And so it's a great team to be a part of. And if we can have fun together inside our walls, but also outside of our walls, I know that the kids are going to be benefiting from being with us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you touched on an important point when you're talking about the youth, and then with the staff as well, is the art of listening. As I've been growing, as a young professional and as a young leader, I'm learning more and more about sometimes you just need to shut your mouth and listen. And I'm curious, what you've been learning about listening in your position for the last few years.
I think it's pretty much all listening. It seems like, it's a really foundational part of the role of club director, listening to youth and making sure that we're meeting their needs, but we're also meeting their interests, because the club is for them. It really is for the kids. And so we need to make it a space that they enjoy. So it's, asking for their feedback or getting surveys afterwards, knowing what we're missing or what we can do better. And so that's kind of a collective thing that I encourage our team to do. And our coordinators have been really intentional about in the last season of time. But then with staff, it's also, being able to listen to their concerns and not brush it off. Like, yes, I can remain optimistic and say, we're still on mission, we're still changing kids. But the reality is it's hard. Working with kids day in and day out, we're going to have behavior challenges. We're going to have good days. We're going to have bad days. And sometimes it's just a matter of, providing that space to listen to where they're struggling and empathize as well. So I really try to give my staff time to not vent, but just be able to express how they really are feeling and not have to sugarcoat it or just remain peppy and optimistic. And then I also like to think about with this club director role is that I've had to listen to a lot of parents, and not always mad, but sometimes they're dealing with a lot of stressors right now, especially with COVID and schools and uncertainty with their jobs, that there's countless times where I answer the phone and sometimes it's just a matter of listening. And one story comes to mind. I had a parent call and she was saying that her daughter wasn't going to be coming to the club today. She's really struggling with some of her mental health. And she goes, Shelly, I don't know what to do. And she kind of went in and dived in a little bit of her ex-husband's concerns and some of the stuff that struggles with her life. And she opened up to me and she goes, oh my gosh, Shelly, I'm so sorry. I know you're not my counselor, but thank you so much for listening. And so I think it's just such an important part of leadership in that club director role is that you're really listening to kids, you're listening to staff, but you're really listening to your parents as well and kind of meeting them where they're at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's meeting them where they're at. And I think, understanding that some parents are probably going to be in a different situation than others, and same with youth in terms of the social emotional growth that they need to kind of learn and go through. It's kind of hard at a certain age, like it gets to a point where there's different, skill levels in each class. So I'm curious, like you talked about meeting, youth, staff, parents where they're at. You practice that listening, but how do you practice that meeting, basically humans where they need to be at?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's something we continue to get better at, and really playing into my team's skill set and making sure that we have coordinators who are really passionate about what they're doing, but also can bring new ideas. And so one thing we've been in tune with is that we want to make sure that the experience for our teens is really intentional and structured differently than how we structure our first and second grade classroom. Because we know that we want to keep these youth. We know the value of the club and what we can help these kids and youth with, but we know we need to be listening and structuring our Blue Room and our teens program differently than our younger ages, so that it has a little bit more freedom to be able to use technology. It has a little bit more relaxed chill time just to be able to interact and have conversations, like casual conversations with their peers or with their staff, but then developing programs that are at a higher level, so they're not just making slime over and over and over again, or if they're doing tool series and that, yes, they've already learned, they can catch on how to use a hot glue gun or a screwdriver pretty quickly, but that they're able to, we're looking at the curriculum and saying, we're going to build it at a higher level for them. So for example, going back to that tool series, is that And instead of them just using it and making small trinkets or practicing the movement, they're actually going to be able to go into our back resource room, and we need to remove some of the cabinet back there so that our mental health specialists can move in and make an office, but we need those cabinets moved out. So what better use than to bring the older teens and say, here's the project, here's the tools, let's get this cabinetry moved out. How can we do that together? So it's kind of recognizing that they're having, that as they older, they have different interests, they have different skill sets, and we start to adapt our program for their age.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to have the same program for the teens as the first graders. Nope. In terms of, making slime every day, like you said, but giving them also some ownership probably over their room and being able to, move different things around and be able to contribute to the club is probably something that they, may not, they probably keep it a little bit more inside, and internalize, but they feel good about being able to contribute to the betterment of the club. So I'm curious, with that and just determining ways to really help people feel proud about, who they are and how they can, contribute to the club. I think you've mentioned a little bit with some of the staff, but in finding their strengths, but I'm curious, going on to the youth level, how do you find, and I think this is one thing that I realized yesterday, and we kind of talked about this a little earlier in our conversation about, I think sometimes as a youth leader and someone, it's our job to help build their confidence up a little bit and help them understand that what their role and what they bring to the group, whether it's basketball, whether it's the teen room, is that it's valuable. So I'm curious how you help them understand that they're contributing and finding ways for them to contribute and bring value and building their confidence. And
I think that's something we're starting to finally navigate into, that we've been able to do our after school environment for at least 3 months now, and kind of getting back to our bread and butter. And as COVID starts to diminish or eventually and start to uncohort, youth will be able to even bring out those skill sets even more. And one thing that comes to mind is that I have a young man who really struggled in our summer camp program all year long, to the point where he ended up being suspended for the last couple of days of the summer camp program for just making some bad choices and damaging other people's property. So of course, then we have to navigate. Okay, is this going to be a good fit? Continuing on to the after school environment. And what we found is he was able to come back. We were able to have conversations and set parameters. But we also learned about him is that he loves working with younger kids. And so putting him in the teens room and just saying, you need to stay here and do teen level programming was not going to be the best fit for him. So he loves the gym, he loves basketball, and he's able to work with younger kids. That really helps still meet the mission of teaching kids new skills, and he gets to be a leader in this community. And we've had zero behavior problems since then. So helping him recognize, here's some of your strengths. And yes, we also recognize your weaknesses in this area, but helping him see, you can still contribute to this club. Even if it hasn't been good in the past, you always have a way moving forward. And so I love that he's been able to be part of that and just develop as a leader in our club, and continue to do so as they get older, so that they don't have to be confined to this one space, but they help provide leadership to younger kids as well. And then of course, we're still starting to develop some of our service projects and being able to be a part of our community and know that that teens be able to meet at the Boys and Girls Club, but then be able to give back to our community, whether it be making hygiene kits or going and serving and planting trees. So those are some things that we haven't quite got to yet, but are on the horizon as we want to get better at helping these older teens become independent, but also have that identity and kind of recognize that, hey, this is my club and I get to be part of it and lead it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's taking the challenge of this particular individual and showing him that, you can contribute, you can be, a great coach, a great mentor. And then he's like, oh, maybe this is what I wanted when I was, this age, maybe it wasn't that, but just giving him some ownership over that you are still a valued member of this club and you're still contributing, and as an opportunity for him to flourish and grow. And like you said, some people just don't, there are certain environments that stimulate people in ways that is probably not being a productive and caring citizen. And that's part of Boys and Girls Club is helping them reflect okay, maybe I shouldn't be over here. I'll do better over here, and giving them the tools and the strength to be able to do that. And so with that, I'm curious how you continue to navigate, we all navigated, COVID altogether and all the challenges and moving forward. And of course, challenges, eventually lead us to finding solutions and finding better solutions for everyone. But in the times, I'm curious, like as a leader, sometimes we have to navigate and face, challenges, obstacles. And I'm curious what your kind of philosophy is on and how you kind of navigate and move through some of them.
Well, with COVID, it was just a changing landscape frequently. And so, really we still had to keep focused on what we know, what we were doing, and still meeting the mission of serving kids. So we had to keep that central. So we know that we just wanted to stay open for kids and we want to stay open for families. So no matter what else was happening, we kept that, at the forefront. But then, of course, this being part of our community and having conversations and dialogue with other leaders and staying attuned to what's going on really helped me as a leader have not inside information, but I was just more in tune with some of the changes that were on the horizon, and I would learn them a little bit in advance. So if I knew that schools were going to be probably not opening in full capacity in September, I knew this in August, so that I was able to help prepare my team and make sure that we had adequate staffing, that we had a sign-up process. So some of it was just being able to be a little bit prepared in advance for some of the changes. And of course, you don't always have that luck. But that was something I tried to stay in tune with to be able to make better decisions if I was more prepared. And then of course, things, come up as they go. You're never expecting like a positive case and then how you're going to communicate with families. And then you have to act very quickly and decisively. And it hurts. I think the biggest thing about leadership is what I think I was naive going to that role 2 years ago, thinking this would be a fun job. I could do this, but how much pain and how many tears I've cried in this position. But I just have to get up and keep going. Even when I get stung a little bit, if I have a parent that's terse with me or mean with me, or if I've made a bad decision and someone doesn't agree with it, leadership's going to hurt sometimes. And it's just a matter of taking care of myself and getting right back up and keep going, because I know that the club needs me and I can take that time I need to heal my wounds a little bit and then get back in the saddle.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you talked about it as that kind of responsibility of the bigger conglomerate. And it's unfortunately not just doing the easy, fun parts, but the leader is, having some of those tough conversations. So I'm curious, you talked about a little bit about, the pain in it and taking care of yourself. I'm curious if you could expand more on that, like the pain and the challenge and those specific, moments of how do you kind of get through and remind yourself? Is it, what's your self-care process? But how do because as leaders in general, we're all going to face that. So I'm just curious how you do.
Yeah, I think it took me a while to figure out, because when I first started this in May 2020, I just did everything. I was like, okay, well, I can hunker down. I can just muscle through. I'll build my team, but I can write the curriculum. I can come in on weekends. I can clean the kitchen. I can do all the things. I just kept going and going and going. So I kind of hit a point of, I'm exhausted. It was like this point of burnout, like this is not the way to be leading. And so I had to really, go back and know that I'm going to have to share some of this responsibility and keep empowering my other individuals and raising up new leaders to help carry the load, because I can't do it on my own. And so that was a big turning point for me when I was able to start handing off and giving responsibilities to others, and that we carried the load together. So it wasn't all on me, but there's still going to be a level of, there's certain things that I still had to carry as a leader that no one else did. And so part of it, it's like, I have to focus personally on myself on good sleep habits, because I need so much sleep. I need like 10 hours of sleep every night. Otherwise I can hardly function. And so that was something I made sure that I was intentionally prioritizing for myself, is knowing that I needed to get enough sleep. And then on top of that, I don't know if you ever caught on, because if I was ever gone and I had a frustrating moment and I was getting heightened and emotional, I'd go for a walk. If you could never find me, I was going for a walk because I was cooling down. So walks were a super important part of how I got through that really tough year, because there was plenty of times where I was crying in my office and I just needed to get out. And so I'd go for a walk around. I'd sit on this bench far enough away, give myself enough time to collect my thoughts, and then get back in. So those are a couple of things that I've kind of just had to learn in the last 2 years as we've been going full force for full days for almost 2 years.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And sometimes you do. I like going on walks as well. It's like just getting out of the house, getting some fresh air. And I'm curious if you have, people you lean on in general, if something is happening and you're having frustrated and you need to talk to people, not like how do you look towards other people when, as a leader, sometimes you need to reach out and connect and talk to others.
I mean, two big thoughts come to mind. It's like, one, I'm really fortunate that I have a wonderful husband. So even if I had to hold it all together all day long and put on my happy face, or at least, be present as the leader of Boys and Girls Club, I could come home and be super open and honest and tell how I really felt. Because a lot of times you have to, you don't have to hold back. You just have to hold back every single thing you're thinking. You can't be just spewing out the mouth all the time. So sometimes being able to come home and express how I really feel about things to Jason was really helpful for me. I mean, so that was day in and day out for my husband being able to support me in this. And then, of course, it's like connecting with other people that were going through the same thing, which was rare. So whenever I'd find someone like Holly at the YMCA, like even though we didn't touch base super often, it was really reassuring to send off an email to her and know that she's going through the exact same thing I am, and even on a larger scale. So there was comfort in knowing that other people were having the same struggles and I wasn't alone.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think those connections in terms of, we're all in the same boat, especially with, Boys and Girls Club. You talked about like staff, and we had the end of the meeting days at the end where we'd all just, kind of talk about our days. Some of us had all challenging days. Sometimes it was only a few of us. And it was great to see that we were kind of all in the same boat together. Mm-hmm. And honestly, shifting gears a little bit, because I know you have a life outside of Boys and Girls Club, and you told me before that you're pursuing your MBA. You're a busy mother. I'm just curious how you do it all, and obviously time management, but how you prioritize. Like, I feel like as something that I'm learning as a leader is that outside of the work stuff is just as important. Actually more important than the work stuff. So I'm curious how you balance it all.
Well, it's a lot. I'm a little crazy to stay this busy. I think the biggest thing is, I of course, like you said, have that time management. I know that I've got my about 40 plus hours giving to the Boys and Girls Club, but then I also know that I have that really intentional window of time with my kids from 5 to 8 before they go to bed, and make sure that we're having dinners together, that we're, talking about our day. So I get to be mom in that moment. And then really, because I enjoy nonprofit management so much, I tend not to just go on Netflix or watch shows in the evening. I really like reading. And so knowing that the content I'm getting from the Masters of Business Administration with nonprofit, it's stuff that I'm really excited about. So being able to read about how to manage volunteers and how to navigate a board of directors, that's stuff I geek out over it. So for me, it's that's my evening time, and it's almost it's comforting and soothing for me. And then of course, I have my weekends as well to be able to spend time with my kids and then take them and do the things that I want to do and be mom to them. So of course, taking them to the pools or taking them, skiing or whatever it might be. So it's just blocks of time. That's really what it is.
Blocks of time, prioritizing, obviously family time. And then, but I think you touched on an important point that I think I've come, to learn a little bit is for me, I thought, maybe business is for me, but the more I got into it, the more I felt like I was working really hard to do it. And you talked about how nonprofit management, you love it. Mm-hmm. And when you're reading and learning and kind of diving in, it feels like it's a mission and its purpose versus working and just working yourself out. And I kind of had that realization, and it sounds like you're really kind of aligning your strengths and your passions and your love with your work. And so it doesn't always feel like work until it does, right?
Exactly. And it's it doesn't feel as cumbersome or laborsome because it's something you're literally digesting. You're this is such good information and I love it and I want to learn more. And so it's not as hard when it's something you're really passionate and interested in. And then what I also love about, being able to do that in the evenings is I was taking so much what I was learning and then putting it right back into the job. Because like I said, I'd never done this job before. I really never led this team. So gosh, I was taking every ounce of information I'm getting in this program and then putting it right back into my work. And so if anything, it really just kind of helped this cycle of me getting better at what I was doing and digesting information and learning and growing on the job as well. So yes, it was crazy to do both. And I will be really excited not to have that extra, 4 hours of reading in the evening. But right now, I think it served me well.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think as we kind of, wrap up this conversation, it's a perfect kind of segue into, you're talking about how you love this, job of Boys and Girls Club and nonprofit management. And so with that, for advice for young leaders, for those who are listening to this podcast, who want to, find that career that they just, they love learning about, I'm curious, what advice you have for them to kind of find that. And then once they find that, what advice do you have in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think don't be afraid to try different things. Like the first job you get might not be forever. And I love that you've taken some time to reflect on what you did like about the work of Boys and Girls Club. I'm sure you've also taken some time to reflect on what you didn't like about it and then identifying that. So, I mean, I would recommend, volunteering in different places is super helpful to know like kind of what your skills and strengths and interests are before you dive into a full, academic program. But then know that that you're never stuck. I think the biggest thing is like, even if you start down a path, it's never too late to shift gears, and everything is relatable. So even if all of a sudden you're like, I think I want to be a teacher, and you start going in the Boys and Girls Club and you get down the road, well, all the skills and things you're learning, even like you don't have to be going into teaching. Like, okay, I know how to manage people. I know how to troubleshoot and think on the fly and how to navigate diverse individuals. That can be applied to anything. So I think don't get too focused on a single track, because all these tracks can go back and forth and are relatable in different fields. So it's always worth trying something new and seeing what you like about it, and then reflecting what you don't like about it, and then keep navigating into, different careers and different paths until you really find that sweet spot.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's definitely just, I like to say throwing spaghetti at the wall, just trying different things and then reflecting upon it. Like, yeah, see what sticks and seeing, what lights you up and brings you joy as well. And even on those days where it's super challenging, it's still, rewarding and a meaningful experience. Mm-hmm. And my final question for you is, how can those that are listening, find out more about the great work that the Boys and Girls Club of Emerald Valley is doing? Yeah,
you'll follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. I think that's our primary way of sharing our story currently. Be able to share, what activities we've got going, what exciting things in the work and that's upcoming on the horizon. We like to share out on Facebook and on Instagram. And on Instagram, it's BGCEV Kids is the handle on there. And then, of course, as I am switching into a new role in resource development and fundraising. And so a primary function of that job is going to be helping amplify and tell our story better in the community. So as I get into this role, hopefully we'll be able to have a few more methods of communication, but those are yet to be determined.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Shelly. I loved our conversation, and I know that those that are listening got a lot out of it.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me, Justin. It's good to see you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts. And this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.